I'm Kristin, and this is my channel, and this is part of my series of weekly tips on how to maximize the digital nomad lifestyle. Now, earlier I did a video about the best things of being a digital nomad, and there are so many, but I couldn't just leave it at that because, as we know, life is not all sunshine and roses or whatever. Sometimes it sucks and there can be too much of a good thing, and this is definitely applicable with a digital nomad lifestyle. So I want to talk about actually 6 downsides to the digital nomad lifestyle so that we can balance things out. Now, I'm a bit of a remote work nerd, and I spend a lot of time thinking about these concepts, studying them and researching them. And one of my workshops is called Strategies for Sustaining the Digital Nomad Lifestyle, where we look at why digital nomads succeed and why they fail. So I've interviewed and questioned a lot of my friends and colleagues and clients about this, and by far, hands down, the number one thing that everybody complains about is loneliness. They say that is the hardest part of being a digital nomad, and even though you can meet a lot of people in the lifestyle, it is possible to still feel lonely. And I know this is applicable whether you're a digital nomad or not, whether you're in a relationship or not. Like, sometimes you just feel lonely no matter where you are in the world. But this can definitely be exacerbated as a digital nomad when you are literally and figuratively just traveling around the world and through life by yourself. Basically, the nature of meeting people when you're on the road is just transient. You might meet somebody and fall in love, and then they leave and you never see them again. Like, this is just part of life, and these things happen. So I think loneliness and not having like a stable community in one place is definitely one of the things that digital nomads sacrifice for the freedom that the lifestyle offers. Number 2, related to loneliness, is dating. Of course, dating is actually something that's difficult no matter where you are in the world, no matter what citizenship you are in, no matter what your lifestyle, job, and housing situation is. I mean, there's plenty of examples of that. But dating actually, I think it does become harder in the digital nomad lifestyle. I actually wrote an article about this a while ago, so I'll link that below. Is dating as a digital nomad actually harder, or is it just in our heads? But this is something to take into consideration, because either you'll meet normal people who don't understand the lifestyle, and then it can be tiring to always keep explaining it to people, or sometimes you meet people in the lifestyle who you hit it off with, but maybe you're just going separate ways. So it can be tough to find people who are on the same path and kind of like on the same wavelength and who aren't tourists or something like that. Digital nomads have actually tried to solve this quite a few times, and most recently I've seen a website called Nomad Soulmates that has, I think, over 1,000 members. So the good news is digital nomads will just become one big borderless nation state in the world, and there will be a critical mass of us, and it won't be such a big deal anymore because there will just be so many ways to get to know other people in the same lifestyle, and there will be so many of us that you'll just be able to meet some more like-minded people, and it'll just be easier. But until then, dating as a digital nomad kind of sucks. Not going to sugarcoat it. The third thing that is kind of a double-edged sword when it comes to being a digital nomad is work-life balance. So on the one hand, you can set your own schedule, and that's great and that's awesome. But on the other, just because you can work 12 to 15 hours a day doesn't mean you should, right? I mean, also, just because you can work 1 or 2 hours a day doesn't mean you should. So being a digital nomad is a constant self-regulating struggle in how much to work and how much to play. It's a good problem to have, but there are real dire consequences if you don't get this down pat, and that is that you could run out of money or go out of business. So you really have to make a conscious effort to balance this. The fourth kind of sucky thing about being a digital nomad is simply having to be more productive and more self-motivated than you normally would in your old life. So this is something that all human beings around the world struggle with. No matter what your job is, there's a reason there's so many blogs and books and like so many topics about productivity. It's like endless. But as a digital nomad, you really have to know what you're doing. You have to get in a routine, get in a schedule, get in the flow, and spend the majority of your time on revenue generating activities and just really be like a productivity ninja, because again, if you let that lapse for too long, then your digital nomad journey could come to a kind of anticlimactic end. Also, you need to say no to things a lot more than you say yes. So there's always going to be something fun going on when you're traveling around the world, and you just need to prioritize your work over that most of the time, unless you're financially independent or you have a lot of passive revenue streams. Just this week, to give you an example, like it could be something small, it could be something big. Last night, I had to decline a sushi dinner that everybody in my co-working space was going to because I had to work. That was what was best for me. And in the same week, I had to turn down going to the World Cup to see one of the semifinal matches because it's just not good timing for me. And even though I know it would be super fun, I knew deep down that was not going to work for me, unfortunately, at this time. So did I make the right decision? I don't know. I might never know. But that's actually brings me to the next point, is that you never get any confirmation that you're doing the right thing. So this is the fifth thing. Maybe it's how we're brought up in school, where we have a course syllabi, we have a teacher, we have an agenda, we have assignments with very specific instructions, and we get feedback. And then we get this in our regular jobs once we graduate from high school or college. We do a good job, we get feedback. Well, as an entrepreneur or a digital nomad, depending on what type of remote job you have, you might not get that feedback directly in your career or in your life. So if you're looking for life advice, sometimes you can ask friends or family what they think, and they're probably not going to give you the right answer. So you're just constantly hoping that you're making the right decision, whether it's where you're living or where you're going or what you're doing for work. And then the feedback you might get in your career as a digital nomad, if you work for yourself, can just simply be in the form of like if you're making a living or not. So you might never get that confirmation or certainty that you're on the right track in life, and very tiny things can have like a butterfly effect that completely change the direction that you're going. It's an adventure, but at the same time, it is a bit weird to just never know if you're doing the right thing. But you just have to go with your intuition and use common sense, and you'll make it. If you're struggling with questions like where to live, what to do for work, how to find clients, things like that, looking externally always can sometimes be a third-party influence that doesn't necessarily take you where you need to go. So you do need to make sure to like listen to your gut and listen to your own intuition when making those decisions. I mean, and there's also an opportunity cost for where you go and what you do. And when you decide to go to one country or another, it creates completely different life experiences. Neither one is good or bad per se, but they're just the decisions that you make. And I think whatever decision you end up making ends up being the right one for you. And the last worst thing about being a digital nomad is housing and travel in general, but more specifically as it relates to housing. So you guys all know Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and food and shelter is at the bottom, right? So if you don't have that covered, then it's going to be really hard to thrive in anything else, in relationships, in your health, in your business. And I see digital nomads, I've been guilty of this as well, spending way too much time when it comes to planning their travel and finding a place to live, especially when people are traveling too quickly. Something that also makes this hard, besides the fact that logistics just take a lot of time, is that the world is currently organized with like three main housing models. You have real estate that you can purchase, you have long-term rentals, and you have short-term vacation rentals. Most digital nomads don't want to buy any property unless it's an investment. They want to sell what they have and get rid of any extra belongings. Long-term rentals typically don't work that well because nobody wants to commit to a long-term lease, and short-term rentals are not a good option either because nobody wants to pay a premium on where they're living. So that leaves only a few options like co-living or subletting or house sharing. House sitting is another one. It's always in the back of your mind. Like if you don't know where you're living, it's going to interfere with other areas of your life. So make sure you definitely nail that down and don't let it distract you from your goals, from your career, and from having fun. So overall, there are things that aren't that great about the digital nomad lifestyle because nothing's perfect. And so when you see headlines like digital nomadism is unsustainable, or being a digital nomad sucks, or I can't do it anymore, or giving it up, or whatever, just note that that's people's individual choices and their individual life path. It doesn't mean that being a digital nomad doesn't work for everyone or doesn't work forever. I've personally been doing it on and off for almost 15 years. So it is sustainable, but you do have to take the good with the bad and just make it work for your specific life path. And just make sure that you're not one of the people having a quarter or midlife nomadic crisis, okay? And what about you guys? What do you think is kind of the dark side or the downside or the worst side of the digital nomad lifestyle? Let me know in the comments. And if you need to get pumped up after this video, I'll link below to the absolute best parts of being a digital nomad, in my opinion, so that you can end the day on a high note. So that's all I have for you guys today. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe, and I can't wait to see you on the next video. Until then, bye for now from Bulgaria.